Where are you right now? Get back home quickly. There's a big problem at home. Huh? Who is this? I don't recognize the voice. I'm Catherine. It's been 3 years since I married my husband, and I've been a stay-at-home wife. My hobby is cooking, and I even have a chef's license. I occasionally use this certification to run cooking classes, which are pretty popular. My husband is friendly to everyone outside, but cold at home. We met through a mutual friend, dated for 2 years, and then got married. Our families and friends celebrated our union, and we had a memorable wedding. However, since our marriage, my husband has been distant and says hurtful things, which troubles me. What do you want to eat for dinner tonight? I don't care, whatever. After breakfast, he curtly replies and grabs his briefcase, heading for the front door. Oh, are you off to work already? Have a good day? Even when I see him off in the morning, he never looks back. Did I do something wrong? These thoughts often cross my mind while cleaning up after breakfast, but I never come to any conclusion, and time just passes. I finish most of the housework by noon and start preparing for the afternoon cooking class. The cooking class, which I run using my credentials, is one of my hobbies. All my students are lovely people. Today's menu includes homemade cheesecake with plans to make several variations like pistachio and matcha. Oh, I forgot to buy something. If I go now, I can still make it in time for shopping. I quickly get ready and head out for some last-minute shopping. Upon reaching the supermarket, I bump into one of my students. Oh, hi, Miss Catherine. Are you shopping for today's class? This young lady, Jessica, just recently joined the cooking class, but because of her friendly nature, the other students treat her like a little sister. Hi there. Yes, I forgot a few things and came to grab them quickly. Oh, let me help you. Can I come over to your place after this? Thank you. Sure, let's head back together. There, Jessica and I finish our shopping and return home. She helps with the preparation as we wait for the other students to arrive. During that time, we chat about random things, and I also give her some relationship advice. My boyfriend is older and we've been together for over a year, but he's never invited me to his place. It's been bothering me, but I've decided to just wait until he's ready. Worrying all the time feels like a waste. I get it. I worry about my husband too. But thinking about it doesn't help, and I'd rather not dwell on it. Exactly. Instead, let's focus on the fun things in life. You're right. Thanks. I've been feeling a bit down lately, but you've cheered me up. I sigh, and Jessica looks concerned for a moment, but soon smiles and encourages me. As we chat, the students begin to arrive one by one, and once everyone's here, we start the cooking class. And home. That evening, as I'm setting the dinner table, I notice my husband's return and greet him at the door. Welcome home. Dinner's ready. Well, with that brief response, he loosens his tie and heads to the bathroom. Not again. I sigh, but remember my conversation with Jessica and muster some energy. If you're gonna take a bath, I'll bring you a change of clothes. Please put your laundry in the basket. You think I don't know that by now? Just go away. Understood. I'm sorry. Is our relationship getting stale? The curt replies, without even making eye contact, left me feeling lonely. Throughout the meal, it's silent, with him constantly watching TV or on his smartphone. How's work been lately? Going well? Oh, I made cheesecake in my cooking class today. Would you like some after dinner? No. By the way, I was thinking of checking out some furniture this weekend. Would you like to come? I've been working a lot lately, and our mealtime conversations have been lacking any warmth. Even though we're sitting together, I just wish we could have even a trivial chat. The lack of conversation makes it harder for me to understand my husband's thoughts compared to before. And I've been feeling more anxious. You know, for the next cooking class, I was thinking, before I could finish, my husband abruptly set down his fork. Can you be quiet? I can't hear the TV. Do you just enjoy bothering me? Clearly irritated, his words made me tense up. Who do you think allows you, who's only good for housework and cooking, to even run these cooking classes? I'm tired from work. Can't I have some peace at home? The harsh words combined with his glare deeply hurt me, but I chose to remain silent to avoid making things worse. The fact that the first time our eyes met today was when he was glaring was another blow. Just stop it. Don't talk to me. The rest of the silent meal felt longer, and I couldn't even taste the food. A month later, my husband stopped talking altogether. No good morning, no I'm off to work, nothing. He would even ignore me when I spoke to him. At this point, I desperately wanted to know the reason, but fear held me back from asking. Good morning. Breakfast is ready. I continued to speak to him, even though I knew he would ignore me. Maybe he's facing some problems at work and is just venting his frustrations on me. I tried to think positively, telling myself that perhaps he's just seeking comfort in this way. If I didn't think this way, I felt I'd mentally break. Today, in the cooking class, I kind of burnt something, so I had to redo it. Oh, our neighbor, she finally gave birth. I was thinking of getting them a gift. Any ideas? Should we get you a new dress shirt soon? The last one got ruined. His silence persisted for over 2 months. I couldn't even remember the sound of his voice. I felt like my spirit had broken. I began to wonder if we could even continue as a married couple. But without understanding why he became like this, I was filled with only loneliness and uncertainty about our future. Then I fell ill and had to visit the hospital. I thought it was just a cold. But the test results were alarming, and I was told I needed a more detailed examination. They say illness can stem from one's state of mind. Could this be the result? You'll need to be hospitalized for a few days for the detailed tests. Please prepare and come in on the scheduled day. Understood. After receiving my test results, I was contemplating how to break the news to my husband. It would be great if the detailed examination shows no issues, but if they found something. My everyday life was already filled with anxiety, and this just added to my stress. Welcome home. I need to talk to you about something. I greeted my husband as usual when he returned from work, attempting to broach the topic. Yet he continued to ignore me. However, since this had become the norm, I persisted. I wasn't feeling well and went to the hospital. They said I need a detailed examination, so I'll have to be hospitalized for a few days. You'll have to manage the meals and laundry on your own during that time. Despite discussing my health, his expression remained unchanged. It was clear that he wasn't even slightly perturbed. You're really gonna ignore me even now, huh? Just please take care. It was evident that he truly didn't care about me anymore. I'd hoped that perhaps my health situation would elicit some concern from him. I was naive to think so, but there's no time for sorrow. There was a lot to take care of. Unlike my husband, my students were all genuinely concerned, and their kind words brought me to tears. I subsequently got admitted for the tests, and though they went smoothly, the results weren't favorable. I was told I needed surgery and was handed a consent form. Through my heart, I doubted he'd even listen to me, let alone sign the form. When I asked what to do if my husband couldn't sign, the doctor inquired, "Is he on a business trip or something?" In that case, your parents can sign it. I decided that if my husband wouldn't sign, I'd ask my parents. When I returned home after a few days away, the house was a mess. Laundry and dishes were piled up. Even the trash from instant noodle cups was left out. I kind of expected this. Later, as usual, my husband returned home silently, took a seat, and began eating the meal I'd prepared. My heart raced with anxiety. Welcome home. I was discharged today. It must have been hard without me. I'm sorry. You know, I've been told I need surgery. They've given me a consent form, and I need your signature. Could you sign it? After dinner, I'll leave it here on the table. Unsurprisingly, he continued to ignore me. Even after hearing that his wife needed surgery, he showed no signs of concern. Frustrated, I decided to directly confront him about his behavior. Why are you ignoring me? Did I do something wrong? It's been about 3 months now. Just tell me why. Perhaps my heightened emotions caught his attention because in the middle of his meal, he got up and left the dining area. Why? Feeling broken, I burst into tears. I didn't know what to do anymore. Could we even call ourselves a married couple under these circumstances? I couldn't bear this painful situation any longer. Maybe it's me who needs to change. I tried to shift my focus to stay positive and eventually drifted to sleep. I needed the consent form signed for my surgery, so the next day I decided to visit my parents' home. As I expected, my husband hadn't signed the consent form I left on the table. Without any hope or further disappointment, I methodically packed and left. Upon arriving at my parents' house, they greeted me with warm smiles. Seeing their smiles, tears welled up, and my parents, sensing something was amiss, comforted me. "What happened?" they asked with concern. I decided to confide in them about the current situation. After hearing everything, my parents were visibly angered. "Divorce him and come back home now." My father's face turned as red as a beet. But since I don't know the reason, I'm unsure of how to act. When I mentioned this, my parents suggested, why not hire a private investigator? Even if there's no suspicion of an affair, knowing how he spends his time outside could provide clues as to why he's ignoring me. I accepted my parents' proposal and decided to have a private investigator look into my husband's actions. Husband's activities. After consulting with the agency, they planned to conduct the investigation during my surgery and hospital stay. They would update me once my health stabilized. The agency was very cooperative and promised to get on it immediately. Discussing it with my parents and the investigator helped alleviate some of my anxiety. On the day of my hospitalization, my parents, who had signed the consent form, accompanied me. They waited outside the operating room the entire time, ensuring I felt at ease going into surgery. The operation was successful, and my recovery went smoothly. When I felt better and contacted the private investigator, they informed me that the report was ready. I promptly invited them to the hospital where, in the presence of my parents, I heard their findings. "Based on our findings, your husband is having an affair." My heart raced at those words and my hands began to tremble. Seeing my reaction, my mother comforted, "You don't have to hear this if you don't want to." But I insisted on knowing the details. "If you ever feel overwhelmed, let us know. For now, I'll continue. The woman involved works at the cafe located on the ground floor of your husband's office building. They met there and he seems to have lunch there almost daily. They frequently meet up after work and head to a hotel. We gathered substantial evidence quickly. It appears their relationship has been a topic of office gossip for over a year. Over a year? We've only been married for 3. So he started the affair less than 2 years into our marriage? It seems that way. When did you first notice a change in his behavior? Reflecting on it, I realized his demeanor had shifted after our first year of marriage. I hadn't suspected an affair then, but the timeline now made sense. I did notice he became distant after our first year. So he had someone else by then. Duh, how foolish of me not to see it. Wanting to shield my parents from further distress, I put on a brave face. But tears betrayed me. They looked heartbroken beside me. "I understand how you feel. With this much evidence, you can file for divorce. It's not my place to say, but you don't have to endure this any longer. The decision, of course, is yours." Looking at the photos again, I noticed my husband's laughter in the evidence, a sight I hadn't seen at home in ages. But now it was directed at another woman. On closer inspection, I recognized her. "Is that Jessica?" I had overlooked her presence in the initial photos because I was focused on my husband. But now I recognized her as Jessica. "You've got to be kidding me. Do you know this woman?" "Yes, she's a student in my cooking class. I can't believe Jessica is the other woman." "So you knew her?" "I'm truly sorry to deliver such distressing news, and it pains us too. However, it appears that this woman doesn't know your husband is married. In other words, she's unaware she's involved in an affair." Upon hearing this, a conversation I had with Jessica came to mind. I remembered Jessica mentioning something about her boyfriend not taking her home. That makes sense. Being married, he can't exactly bring her home. We also did some digging on her. She has a good reputation. Given that your cooking class was on hiatus during our investigation, we never suspected you'd know her. What do you plan to do? The idea of Jessica having an affair was hard to swallow, but I felt the need to speak with her. If she knew and still chose to get involved, I'd want to hold her accountable. Regardless, I had made up my mind about my husband. I'm going to divorce him immediately, and I'd like to speak with Jessica first. Depending on our conversation, I'll decide my next move concerning her. Upon hearing my decision, my parents encouraged me to move back home without delay. The investigator, with a warm smile, reassured, "We'll support you in any way we can." I felt stronger knowing I wasn't alone. After my discharge from the hospital, I seized the opportunity when my husband was at work to pack up my belongings. The state of our home was pitiful, but that no longer mattered to me. I packed only the essentials and left the house, leaving behind the business card of a divorce attorney on the table. Outside, my parents' car awaited, and I rode with them back to their house. 2 weeks later, my husband called. Just seeing his name on my phone's screen made my heart race and my hands tremble, but I picked up the call with unwavering resolve. Galil, where are you? Get back home now. The house is a mess. Hearing his voice after so long, it sounded harsher than ever. Who is this? I don't recognize the voice. That comment seemed to infuriate him further. I'm busy. Please don't disturb me. You think you can make a fool out of me? Get back here and clean up. I don't recognize the voice, so I'll hang up now. I immediately ended the call. I once yearned to hear his voice, to speak with him. Now, just hearing it repelled me. After hanging up, the weight lifted off my shoulders, and I let out a deep sigh. At that moment, there was a knock on my room door. My mother peeked in, smiling gently, suggesting we have some tea. As we chatted over tea, the home phone rang. Picking it up, it was unsurprisingly my husband again. Oh, Bob, hi there. It's been a while. What's up? That's my mom. She handles situations with such composure. And there's my dad looking furious like a storm brewing. It's been a while. Is Catherine with you? Yes, she's here. As I expected, actually Catherine left with her belongings. She's adamant about getting a divorce. I want to talk things out, but discussing with Catherine is fruitless. Could you please ask your daughter to come back? Yes, I'm aware of the divorce situation. Could you agree to it? What? What are you talking about? I don't want a divorce. And for the record, Catherine is the one at fault here. She left without doing any housework. Don't you think she has failed as a housewife? I don't think so at all. But if you feel that way, isn't that reason enough to get a divorce? If she just takes care of the house, I'd be willing to give her another chance. You've really lost your morals, haven't you? Excuse me? From what I gather, you just want someone to do the chores, right? Why not hire a maid? Plus, not signing the surgery consent, not visiting during surgery or her stay at the hospital. What's your deal? Not supporting your wife during hard times makes you less of a man and more of a monster. Well, I've been swamped with work. That's not it, is it? You found it bothersome, right? And now with the house in a mess, since there's no one to clean, you're searching for Catherine? She's not your maid, you know. Get it together. Hey, you piece of work, I'm surprised you even dared to call. Letting my daughter marry you was the biggest mistake of my life. What do you think you're doing to someone's daughter? Agree to the divorce now. Don't you dare come near my daughter ever again. Got it? My father, unable to hold back his anger any longer, snatched the phone from my mother and gave him a piece of his mind. Then, with a slam that made me think the phone might break, he hung up. Dad, be careful. You'll break the phone. I got carried away. Witnessing my parents' exchange, I couldn't help but chuckle. My husband called several times after that. His name on the screen now only evoked disgust. Hello? Hey, it's me. When are you coming back? Did he forget our conversation? He acted as if nothing happened. Stop playing games. I reached out for a reason. Didn't you want to talk to me? I don't recognize your voice, and I don't intend to talk to someone like that. Acting high and mighty now, are you? If you come back now, I might consider talking. Hurry up and clean up. It became clear with his comments. He surely looked down on me. More than a wife, he sees me as a maid. No, I'm fine without the conversation. Enough of your nonsense. How much more trouble do you plan on causing? If you keep this up, I'll really divorce you. Got it? You've always been dependent on me, so I doubt you can manage. I'm glad you're willing to consent to the divorce. I realized then that I could no longer harbor any affection for my husband. I wanted the divorce finalized soon. That's it, huh? You finally lost it. You can't survive without me. Why on earth did I marry someone like this? I can't even remember what I saw in him. It would have been better if you'd kept your mouth shut. If that's all you can say, maybe you should just sew it shut, huh? Well, goodbye. I felt this would drag on for a while. Today I was set to talk with Jessica. This matter is also essential. I prepared myself and headed to the meetup spot with Jessica. Mrs. Catherine, Upon seeing me, Jessica waved with a bright smile. I couldn't sense that Jessica knew about the situation. Sorry to keep you waiting. It's been a while. I'm so happy to see you. How's your health? Are you okay? Since our last cooking class concerned, Jessica inquired about my well-being. Thank you. I'm much better. I will need regular doctor visits, though. I'm glad you're better. But please take care. So, you mentioned wanting to talk about something. What's up? We decided to settle in a cafe and ordered drinks. Then I broached the main topic. Jessica, you told me about your boyfriend before. Is his name by any chance Bob? Upon hearing this, Jessica looked shocked. Yes. How did you know Bob? Jessica's eyes widened in surprise. Well, he's my husband. When I said that, Jessica seemed frozen in place. There was a palpable tension in the air, and I noticed Jessica's hand holding her drink trembling slightly. What? Bob? Your husband? Bob is... Jessica seemed utterly taken aback. From her reaction, it was clear she hadn't known. I guess you really didn't know. I only found out recently that my husband was cheating on me. Hearing the word cheating, Jessica's face started to pale. Cheating? You're saying I was involved in an affair? But maybe it's just someone with the same name. I swiftly placed a photo in front of Jessica. She picked it up with apprehension, and upon seeing it, started to cry. I was deceived. This is awful. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I didn't feel any anger towards Jessica, as she sobbed uncontrollably. Rather, my rage towards my husband was bubbling up, ready to explode. It's okay, Jessica. It's not your fault, and I don't blame you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I thought we needed clarity. I'm so sorry. I tried to comfort the sobbing Jessica. I knew revealing this would hurt her, but had she known and been defiant, I would have been angered. I'm thinking of getting a divorce. What about you? I'm breaking up with him. Everything's clear now. I'm so sorry for what you've been through. Even though I didn't know, I can't imagine how hard it was for you. Watching Jessica apologize through her tears, my own eyes welled up. After a while, Jessica calmed down, and we discussed our next steps. I plan to proceed with the divorce. I'm definitely ending it with Bob. I'm just so mad. I know it might seem strange for me to offer, but I can provide lots of evidence of his infidelity. Let's make him pay for this. Seeing Jessica, also a victim, willing to help, made me somewhat envious of her resilience. I placed my drink on the table and extended my hand towards Jessica. Thank you. Let's do this. Yes. Jessica grasped the hand I offered, and we shared a firm handshake. The next day, I decided to visit a lawyer's office. If Bob didn't agree to the divorce, we might have to go to mediation. Wanting to be proactive, I took all the evidence, including what I got from Jessica, to the attorney. After consultation, they said the evidence was sufficient and suggested sending a formal notice and moving forward with the divorce. I agreed. 3 days later, Bob called as usual. Until then, I'd been ignoring his calls, but I picked up this time. Hello? You've been ignoring me? I told you I don't want a divorce. You have to come back. The house is a mess, and we're getting complaints from the neighbors. It's all your fault. Get back here now. From his tone, it seemed he hadn't received the notice yet. Well, it was probably too soon for that. I responded while mulling this over. I said I want a divorce. After all this silence, don't expect me to jump at your every whim. Plus, there's more you're not aware of. As I said this, I sensed Bob's unease. What the hell are you talking about? I've done nothing wrong. Oh, Bob? Long time no see. While Bob was rambling, I handed the phone to Jessica. As it happened, we were having coffee at that moment, and she had decided to take the call. What? Jessica? Bob's shock was evident, even over the phone. Yeah, it's Jessica. I'm currently having coffee with your wife. What the hell are you talking about, Jessica? It's pathetic. Everything's out in the open, including the fact that you deceived me. And after hearing from your wife about how you've been neglecting her, especially when she was sick, I think you're just the worst. The fact that I even spent a second with someone like you makes me sick. Stay away from me. Don't you ever contact me again. Go to hell, you jerk. Jessica's demeanor was something I'd never seen before. Her tone and way of speaking so unlike her usual self. She's kind of scary when she's angry, I thought to myself with an oddly detached sense of amusement. Hey, what's up with you, Jessica? You're not your usual self. Come on, be your upbeat and positive self like always. Shut up, loser. By now saying that, Jessica's face reverted back to her usual cheerful and cute self as she handed back my phone. Here you go. What a refreshing face she had. It even made me feel a bit lighter. Do you understand now? I think you'll be hearing from the lawyer soon. Saying that, my husband, unable to hide his panic, had a quivering voice. A lawyer? No, you got it wrong, Catherine. Jessica was just a fling. You know how they say cheating is a mark of a man's prowess? I was just trying that out. I mean, of course, you're my number one, Catherine. And look, I wasn't ignoring you. Yeah, my hearing's been bad lately, and sometimes I can't hear properly. So, that's why I might not have heard about the doctor's appointment and stuff. I just broke up with Jessica, and you're the only one for me. The more he spoke, the more disgusting he sounded. His voice was mixed with panic, and he even used an overly familiar tone with me. His lame excuses almost made me hang up. Do you know what prowess means? It means the energy and resilience to see things through and a dependable character. So in other words, someone like you, who doesn't have a shred of prowess, has no right to cheat. Well, I think anyone who cheats lacks prowess anyway. Oh, and don't contact me directly anymore. From now on, communicate through the lawyer. Honestly, you're just gross. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Goodbye. Wait, I'm sorry. I apologize. I won't ignore you anymore, and I won't cheat anymore. I didn't really pay attention to his continued pleas since I had conveyed what I needed to. So I hung up. There was no need to engage with him anymore. Looking over at Jessica, she was laughing out loud. That felt good, didn't it? Yes, and from now on, just call me Catherine. We're friends now, right? Hearing that, Jessica's eyes became watery. Catherine, I'm so sorry for everything. I adore you. While the whole thing with that jerk is a dark chapter in my life, I'm grateful that it brought me closer to you. She hugged me, and I realized that to me, she was like a beloved younger sister. When I got home and informed my parents about the situation, both seemed relieved. I apologized for causing them concern, but they told me it's natural to worry about family. Afterward, when the formal notice from the lawyer reached my husband, he had no choice but to reluctantly agree to the divorce. He couldn't argue since we had so much evidence against him, and he agreed to pay the settlement. When the lawyer visited his place, it was so filthy and stank that they decided to discuss matters outside. Some nosy neighbors overheard their conversation, and since one of them was notorious for spreading gossip, soon the whole neighborhood knew. My ex-husband, finding it unbearable to stay, moved back with his parents. Later, I learned from his parents, who called to apologize, that he had quit his job and was now living as a recluse. As for me, after finalizing the divorce, I resumed my cooking classes and am enjoying it. Jessica quit her job at the cafe she was working at and is planning to open her own place. It's been her dream for years, and she's considering having me work with her. Looking back, I wonder why I put up with that kind of life. If I had known how freeing and happy life would be after divorce, I probably would have left him sooner. I spend most of my days laughing with my parents, and life is blissfully joyful. Even though I still lived at home when I turned 40, my younger sister, Mary, always looked down on me deep inside. In fact, one of the reasons I hadn't married was because of Mary, but she used that as a means to mock me and always ridiculed me. However, ever since I told her we should cut ties, she hasn't been involved with me at all. Then one day, Mary showed up and said she was going to live here from now on. But since I'm expecting a child, there isn't enough room. So, Sarah, you need to move out within 3 days. When I told our parents about it, they seemed taken aback and said, then we'll move out too. I was relieved to hear that from them. Mary, unaware that both our parents are going to leave, will be in for a shock. She probably can't imagine a future where she ends up unhappy. My name is Sarah. I have a younger sister, 5 years my junior. Her name is Mary. Unlike me, who has an average height, weight, and a face you'd see anywhere, Mary has a model-like figure, a cute face, and has always been treated kindly by others. Relatives always doted on the younger, adorable Mary more than they did on me. Even our grandparents, I believe, adored Mary more than they did me. Among those friends and acquaintances who wanted to get close to Mary, some compared our looks, mocking me and boosting Mary's ego. Maybe it was the accumulation of such instances, but Mary gradually started to believe she was superior in everything compared to me. However, even though Mary was praised more for her looks, I was the more serious one, so I excelled in academics. So Mary kept pestering our parents and would say, "Show me the grades Sarah got when she was my age." And when they actually showed the grades from when I was Mary's age, it turned out my grades were better. In her anger, Mary would sometimes tear up my certificate right then and there. Our parents feared that if this behavior continued, Mary's negative attitude would persist into adulthood. My dad would often say, "Stop comparing yourself to Sarah all the time. Mary is Mary and Sarah is Sarah. It's silly to compare." When Mary compared our looks and said, "Sarah, you're really ugly. Can you please not call yourself my sister?" My mom would scold her and say, "Mary, if you keep up with this bad attitude, no matter how cute you are now, people will quickly see how ugly your personality is and won't want to be around you." However, even though my parents tried their best to correct Mary's behavior, most of our relatives took Mary's side. And above all, our grandparents absolutely adored Mary. I don't know what Mary said to them, but our grandparents would say, "It's terrible to be so hard on Mary. Maybe you're just jealous of her. Why don't you send Sarah away to my parents?" Before we knew it, our grandparents started giving allowance and gifts only to Mary, but not to me. Upon seeing this, my dad was furious. He would say, "How can you treat the same grandchildren differently based on their looks? Are you really my parents?" And he decided to cut ties with our grandparents. Since then, we've never been to our grandparents' house or attended any family gatherings. Mary seemed unhappy about it, but since my parents were firm on their decision, she probably realized that making a fuss on her own would be pointless. When Mary reached middle school, it seemed she wanted to be adored by people outside of our family. At Mary's middle school, her reputation differed greatly between boys and girls. The boys saw her as the best girl to date in school, while the girls labeled her as a mean girl. By the time Mary started middle school, I was already in high school. I only heard these rumors when I found out that one of my classmates had a younger brother attending Mary's middle school. Apparently, the rumors about Mary were widespread throughout the school. From what I had gathered, whenever one of her friends got a boyfriend, within just a few days, that boyfriend would end up dating Mary. In short, Mary had been stealing her friends' boyfriends. At first, she only did this to her close friends' boyfriends, but as she ran out of female friends, she began targeting any girl who had a boyfriend. Honestly, when I heard this, even though she's my younger sister, I thought, yeah, she would probably do something like that. As Mary used to try and take my things all the time, the crayons and paints I would get would often end up being used by her. It seems like she's always had a knack for taking things from others. However, even after I told our parents about Mary's reputation at school and they got mad at her, I doubted she would reflect on her actions. I mean, she's been like this forever. I believe her arrogant nature might be due to our relatives and grandparents always praising her too much. But those relatives and grandparents won't be around forever. She needs to realize soon that her attitude is self-destructive, or her future might be in jeopardy. That's why, hoping for some change, I talked to our parents about what was being said about Mary at school. That evening, our parents confronted her, asking if the rumors about her at school were true. I thought she might dodge the question, but listening from behind the door, Mary said, "Those guys just say I'm better than their exes, right? It just means I'm a better catch, doesn't it? Why lecture me instead of confronting the school when you realize your daughter is being badmouthed? Do you even really care about me?" She didn't seem to feel any guilt about stealing boyfriends at all. Even though those rumors exist, because of her actions, she still had the nerve to blame our parents, who were trying to discipline her. Both Mom and Dad were dumbfounded by Mary's logic. Every time Mary caused another issue, our parents tried to advise her, but she never listened. At this point, both our parents and I thought her behavior was beyond correction. But our concerns for Mary only lasted until she graduated high school. When she went to college, she announced she was going to live with an older boyfriend near her university. She persuaded our parents and left home. She never came back. Even in her graduating year, she didn't contact us. I don't even know if Mary managed to graduate and get a job. Since my parents were paying for tuition, it seemed they knew that Mary would eventually graduate from college. However, they were taken aback by Mary's lack of communication with the family. They were like, "We really can't imagine a person like this succeeding in the real world." But at the same time, they were also like, if she's not gonna reach out from her end, that's fine. We don't need to force a relationship on her. So they decided to leave Mary be. But Mary, who usually brushed off whatever happened at home, keenly returned to our childhood house when I brought my fiancé Thomas. Apparently, a relative who lived close to our home and adored Mary had seen me bring a man, seemingly my boyfriend, home. They immediately informed Mary, "Is this guy your boyfriend, Sarah? He's incredibly handsome. He looks like he's got his act together, too. I'm surprised he wants to marry you." Without hesitation, Mary, who had suddenly appeared at our house, spotted Thomas. While I was away from my seat, she took my spot and snugly wrapped her arm around Thomas, showering him with compliments. Even when our mom and dad told her to stop, she was like, "If he's gonna marry Sarah, he'll be my big brother, right? I just want to get along with him as family from now on." She didn't let go of Thomas. Moreover, when I returned from the restroom and firmly told Mary, "Let him go," she started to fake cry. She said, "You always do this. Everyone always treats me so unfairly." Thomas watched in confusion as the situation unfolded. The gathering soon dispersed and I asked Thomas to leave. My parents were furious with Mary. I felt relieved thinking the matter was settled, but 3 months before our wedding, I suddenly received a message from Thomas wanting to call off our engagement. When I told him I couldn't accept this just through a message on WhatsApp, Thomas said, "Then let's meet at a cafe tomorrow." The next day, I went to a cafe at the appointed time. When I arrived, Mary and Thomas were already there, sitting close and smiling at each other. Thomas looked serious when he saw me, while Mary had a smug expression. Thomas said earnestly, "I can't see myself living with you, especially after how you treated your sister Mary and how your parents reacted. That's why I want to break off our engagement." Mary smirked at his words. Having seen them cozying up in the cafe earlier, my love for Thomas had already gone cold. I asked, "So how much are you going to pay me for breaking our engagement?" Thomas replied, "Compensation? We aren't even married. We haven't even had the wedding, and it can still be canceled," his eyes widening in surprise. I sighed deeply and replied, "We exchanged engagement rings, we introduced each other to our parents, and we had a wedding planned. When an engagement is called off in such a situation, the one causing the breakup has to pay compensation." I tried to explain it patiently, but Thomas, looking dumbfounded, was like, "If we're talking about the cause, it's on you. It's because you didn't treat Mary right. There's no way that's the reason. You cheated on me with Mary, so the breakup is on you." It seemed that Thomas was more upset about being the reason for the breakup than about paying compensation. We argued in the cafe about it. All the while, Mary was clinging to Thomas, making it clear that they were the root of the problem. I decided to call Thomas's parents to the cafe to judge who was in the wrong. Even though Thomas was their son, they must have realized the situation was inexcusable, as he had brought another woman to a serious talk about breaking off an engagement and remained close to her throughout. "Sarah, we're truly sorry for what our son has done. He's talking nonsense right now, but we promised to pay for his sin," he assured me. A few days later, I decided to hire a lawyer for this matter, and eventually a court awarded me a certain amount. I was told that Mary and Thomas still didn't agree with the situation, but it was likely that Thomas's parents covered the payment for him. With that, I thought I'd never involve myself with Mary or the backstabbing Thomas ever again. Both my dad and mom had said they disowned Mary for stealing my fiancé Thomas. I thought Mary would never return to our family home again. However, when I was around 40, working at home, my cell phone suddenly rang. It was a blocked call, but I thought it might be work-related, so I decided to answer it. Then I heard a familiar female voice on the other end. "Hey, I bet you're still doing well. Because of me, you missed out on marriage, right? You've probably been single all these years. Such a pitiful life living alone. The mocking tone made me instantly realize it was Mary. Only she made fun of me like that and called me in this tone. I was like, what do you want? If you've got no business, I'm gonna hang up. Mary was like, hang on. What I've got to tell you might just change your life. You'll regret it if you hang up now. If she was going this far, there was no reason not to listen. Given her audacity, I felt compelled and was like, what's that? I'm moving back to our family home. But since I'm expecting a child, there isn't enough room, so you need to leave within 3 days. See, I'm pregnant. For our parents, it's the grandchild they've been waiting for. I'm doing what a single woman like you couldn't. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You were disowned, remember? Since I can give them the grandchild you couldn't, I'm sure they'll welcome me with open arms. If I ask them to kick you out, I bet they'll do it, she replied confidently. I seriously doubted that. Both Mom and Dad were furious about Mary stealing Thomas away from me. They were like, that's an unimaginably low act for any human. They wouldn't simply forgive Mary because she's having a child. Moreover, even though my engagement was broken off because of Mary, she didn't feel guilty. The damages were paid by Thomas, or more precisely by Thomas's parents. Mary never apologized to me, nor did she make amends for her actions. This had always angered my parents. Even if she showed up now, they'd probably just guide her to the door to leave. But Mary seemed convinced that our parents would be on her side and said, so, make room for me. There's no place for a single woman in our family home. And without hearing my reply, she hung up. Although I was reluctant, I talked to my dad and mom about being contacted by Mary, that she was apparently pregnant, and that she was coming back to our house and told me to leave so that she could have a room for the child. Both my dad and mom looked absolutely shocked for a moment, but after a short pause, as if thinking this was unbelievable, they shrugged and said, well, I guess we gotta leave too. I was relieved to hear those words. It seemed like my dad and Mom weren't really on Mary's side after all. My mom asked, when did Mary say she'll be back? Only then did I realize Mary hadn't told me exactly when she'd return. I honestly told my mom that I was told to leave within 3 days. My mom said, in that case, we better start packing soon. She also added, knowing Mary, even if Sarah doesn't leave this house, she'll barge in, make herself at home, and force Sarah out. We don't want to live with her. My dad, sitting next to her, nodded in agreement. From that moment on, we started our moving preparations at a breakneck speed. Since we didn't know when Mary might show up, we reached out to Thomas's parents using the contact information we had kept for emergencies. What we found out was quite a shocker. It turns out Thomas's dad is a big company CEO, and Thomas had been groomed every day to be the next CEO. He met me and we got engaged. But then he cheated on me with my sister, leading to our broken engagement. They believed he couldn't be trusted as a professional, so he got demoted to a regular employee or something. But it seems he had been hiding this from Mary. Mary always talked about Thomas as if he was some big deal, so he must have thought she'd leave him if she found out he wasn't going to be the CEO. But Mary, believing Thomas would become the CEO, was in for a surprise. Thomas would become a CEO and make lots of money. He had been making extravagant purchases. Somehow, Thomas was dipping into his savings to fund Mary's spending sprees, but when he ran out of money, he tried to talk her into saving. However, she snapped back at him and said, if you're gonna be a CEO, you should have money, right? In the heat of the moment, Thomas apparently said, the reason I'm not gonna be a CEO is because I was gonna marry you. By that time, they had found out that Mary was pregnant, so they decided against divorce. But she said, I'm going back to my parents' house for a while. You're broke, right? I bet my parents, who can support my single sister, have some money. And now it seems she's living in a hotel. After a while, when relatives near our home confirmed I was moving, I suppose she was planning to come to my place. And yet, I wonder if Mary thinks of me as a jobless loser or something. She can't fathom the idea that I might be making money on my own. Perhaps she's always thought of her sister, me, as lesser than her. Since Mary isn't working now, she probably assumed that I'm not only jobless but also unmarried and living off my parents. That's not the case, though. After we moved, I got a call from an unknown number. Answering it, sure enough, it was Mary. "Hey, I see the house is up for sale. Where are Mom and Dad?" "Mom and Dad? They moved to a place they've always dreamed of." "I didn't hear about that." "Why would I tell someone I've cut ties with?" It seems Mary went to our old family home and finally realized it was on sale. Well, if there's a for sale sign in front of the house, anyone would know that no one's living there anymore. "And you? Still clinging to Mom and Dad?" "Nope, not me. I decided to follow my husband on his overseas assignment." "Wait, husband?" She must have assumed I was still single, but it's been a few years since Mary stole Thomas from me. In that time, I found someone special, and we've been married for 3 years now. Given that our child is still young, I initially held off on traveling abroad. My husband went ahead, but now it seems all right to take our child and join him. I was like, "I have no intention of helping you, nor do our parents. Just do your best with your beloved husband, okay?" And hung up. I canceled my cell phone service before leaving the country and set off for overseas. I still occasionally hear from Thomas's parents, so I get updates about Thomas and Mary. Without a family home to return to and no knowledge of where her parents or sister are, Mary is left with only Thomas to rely on. It seems that after Mary drained all their savings, Thomas had a wake-up call and realized that they won't have much to fall back on. Like, we won't divorce since we're having a child, but from now on, you're on an allowance. But most of that allowance went towards repaying the money she squandered, so she was left with not even a cent. While taking care of their child, she eventually had to work and live with her in-laws. Now she's working hard every day to pay off what she owed. Guess a marriage stemming from deceit never really turns out well, huh? Samantha can't even be useful in the kitchen, I bet. She doesn't serve good meals at home. Suddenly, all the cold stares in the room turned to me. Seeing my reaction, Bob, feeling even more confident, began to boast loudly. "Man, my wife's cooking is terrible." When did you taste my cooking? Aren't your meals always at your mistress's place?" I raised my voice, exposing Bob's infidelity. "It's no lie. I have evidence right here." I pointed to the documents held by my father-in-law. "My name is Samantha Waters, 35 years old. I've always been intimidated by the assertiveness some men have, even finding it scary. I've had very few romantic relationships and hardly dated. By the time I reached what they call middle age, my parents became concerned and suggested arranged dates. At first I refused, but with few opportunities to meet men and my parents pushing, I felt the pressure to marry and went on several arranged dates. One of them was with Bob. Bob was a kind, responsible man and an elite employee at a top-tier company. Though he was big both in height and build, he wasn't intimidating and I didn't find him scary. Talks of marriage went smoothly and I met Bob's parents. Bob's family runs a traditional cooking school, and his father is a renowned master in the field. Bob's father, a serious man, always wore traditional outfits, which made me stand a little straighter every time I met him. On the other hand, my mother-in-law was soft-spoken with a kind face, brightened by dimples when she smiled. Bob and I decided to get married. My parents were over the moon, saying I had hit the jackpot. A condition of our marriage was for me to become a housewife, so I quit my administrative job at an electronics company. Even then, my colleagues teased me about marrying up. Looking back, that might have been the peak of my happiness. Bob told me he's currently swamped at work and might not be able to come home often, asking for my patience. He wanted to achieve certain milestones in his current job before quitting and helping with the family business. I admired his commitment and decided to support him. Years into our marriage, Bob rarely came home. I knew he would be busy, but I didn't expect this. Most nights, I'd be alone in the living room of our apartment, which Bob's parents had generously provided for us, waiting for him. It seems he's not coming home tonight. I've only cooked for Bob a few times since we got married. He hardly ever came home, and when he did, it was very late. He often went on business trips, sometimes leaving home for days. He usually ate out and worked late into the night. Despite coming home late, he would be up and out extremely early. I often worried if he was getting enough rest or eating nutritious meals. He would leave without even having breakfast, One morning, as Bob was getting ready, I asked him why he didn't eat at home. "Bob, I wish you would have a proper meal." Without even looking at me, as he was fixing his tie, he said, "It's fine. Work is just really busy right now. Don't worry about it, Samantha." Bob just said that and immediately left the house. Even on weekends, he's at work from early morning until late at night, regardless of whether it's Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday. He's often away on business trips. At first, I thought maybe Bob was trying to give me space, avoiding being at home too much. Or perhaps he was embarrassed. I even thought such sweet things at one point. When he's out this much, it feels like I'm living alone. Bob has very few belongings, only the bare essentials. Naturally, we don't converse much. So, I don't know Bob's hobbies, his favorite foods, or what he dislikes. Did I do something wrong? I pondered that as well. I talked to my parents about it, but they just said something like, "Men being busy with work is just right," and didn't take my concerns seriously. Even my few friends said it's better if the husband is out earning and not home, even saying they envy me. They too don't seem concerned about my feelings. While Bob handles the finances, he always provides enough for our monthly expenses, so there's no financial insecurity. But this very lack of insecurity makes me worry more. I keep blaming myself, thinking I might have done something to upset him. I wonder if I'm lacking as a wife. I clean thoroughly, I've been learning to cook, trying to make delicious meals every day. In the limited time Bob is home, when he sees my anxious face, he tries to reassure me. "Samantha, you're doing just fine." I forced myself to believe this is just how some couples are. But recently, my father-in-law scolded me. I received a call from him at the end of the year. Getting a call from my father-in-law is rare, so I was taken aback when he suddenly yelled at me, making me drop the phone. "Samantha, what on earth are you thinking?" Did something happen? Don't play dumb. Why aren't you attending the family gatherings? Every single year. It was news to me that there were family gatherings. I had talked to Bob about New Year's greetings before. He told me that every New Year's Day, the students from the cooking school come to greet his parents, so the family doesn't gather. Moreover, he said that if the family did gather, there would be too many people, making things unmanageable. Usually, only Bob goes to his parents' home with New Year's gifts. First of all, if you aren't attending this year's gathering, shouldn't you apologize for not being able to? His stern voice made me freeze. It's a New Year's tradition for me to stay home while only Bob goes to his parents. I've been very careful with the New Year's gifts and greeting cards, trying to be as courteous as possible. I did suggest to Bob that maybe I should call, but he always said his parents were super busy around New Year's, and I assumed it was because his father was a renowned cooking teacher. I was also a bit scared of meeting my strict father-in-law. According to him, the family gathers on January 1st for a New Year's party, and the students start visiting from January 2nd. I could only apologize over the phone. My father-in-law just criticized me, then hung up. After the call, my mind was filled with questions. What did Bob mean by, "Samantha, you don't need to come"? Why did he lie about there being no family gathering? Did Bob really not want me to attend that much? That night around midnight, Bob came home. I felt this was the only chance, so I braced myself and asked Bob about the New Year's gathering. "I got a call from your dad today. He was upset that I'm not attending the New Year's gathering." Bob sighed heavily and replied with an irritated tone. "You know how it feels to be at a place with so many people. Plus, many wives don't like going to their husband's family home, right? That's why I was trying to be considerate." I was shocked at Bob's misunderstood kindness. Sure, many might dislike visiting their spouse's family. I've heard my friends complain about it, but to never go even once, that's a bit much, isn't it? Bob was reluctant, but I insisted on attending the gathering. The Waters family's New Year's party was a grand affair. A lot of relatives gathered, exchanging greetings. At last you showed up. "It's only natural for family to attend such events," my father-in-law said sternly. Even when I told him that Bob had said there wasn't any family gathering, my father-in-law remained furious. "You've been avoiding us because you didn't want to see us," he accused. Unable to respond to his anger, I gave up on arguing. The rest of the family also gave me cold looks. I expected that and decided to endure. What I couldn't stand, however, was that Bob didn't come to my aid at all. Instead, he just quietly drank his beer. As the night progressed and drinks flowed, people started coming over to me with complaints. "I've never seen you do any housework," one said. In my mind, I whispered, "It's because Bob hardly ever comes home. You probably don't cook often, and when you do, it's not even tasty. That's why he always ends up eating out." Another chimed in. The words that came from the relatives were unfamiliar to me. What had Bob been telling them? I couldn't understand why he would belittle me like that. "I'm sorry, I'll be careful from now on," I said, given everyone's stern remarks. I helped out in the kitchen, serving drinks, feeling like I was walking on eggshells. I barely managed to greet all the relatives and students before heading home, completely drained. Bob said he was going to head straight to work from his parents' house, so like in the morning, he was on his own in the evening. Looking back, a lot of things seemed odd. Why did Bob say there wasn't any family gathering? Now there's talk that I'm the wife who doesn't do any chores. Could there be a connection between Bob not coming home and these rumors? Once something piqued my interest, I couldn't let it go. Luckily, I had plenty of time. I decided to follow Bob and see what he was up to. It's what you often hear detectives on TV call tail surveillance, or simply tailing. In the morning, I discreetly followed Bob when he left. I knew where Bob's company was, so I had no trouble tailing him there. It felt a bit exciting, like I was playing detective. It felt more fulfilling than just spending a day at home. I killed time at cafes and diners near his workplace and followed him when he left. That day, he didn't do anything suspicious and returned to the office in the evening. I kept an eye on him from a cafe with a view of his office, and around 7 p.m. Bob came out. Was he leaving work early today? If he headed straight home, he would find out I wasn't there. I rushed home. I managed to get home before Bob and hurriedly made dinner, waiting for him. But Bob didn't come home until after midnight. I felt something was off, so I decided to tail him again the next day. Bob's routine was the same from morning till evening. He'd go to the office, leave for a bit, and return in the evening. The real question was what he did afterward. As I kept an eye on him from a different diner, around 6 p.m., Bob left his office. Today, I decided to tail him directly. Instead of heading towards the station for home, Bob started walking. Bob started walking in a different direction. I hesitated for a moment. Bob was headed towards a downtown area lined with motels, much like Las Vegas's red light district. I mustered the courage to follow, but lost him. As I was looking around, Bob suddenly appeared before me. Both of us were startled and just stared at each other. Bob was the first to speak. "Samantha, what are you doing here?" Caught off guard, I stuttered. "Why are you here of all places? What have you been up to during the day?" I was taken aback. Bob was the suspicious one, not me. Yet, he was acting like I was up to no good. "First off, get back home. We'll talk then." Being scolded by Bob in such a public place was too embarrassing, so I practically ran back home. The moment Bob got home late that night, he confronted me with something unbelievable. "You think just because you're bored at home, you can follow your husband around? Why the hell should I have to support someone like you?" I tried to defend myself, albeit weakly. "I do take care of the house. Just because you do a little cleaning, don't say you're handling the chores. From now on, you've got a budget of $100 for the month." I was speechless. How am I supposed to live on just $100? The water and electricity bills are automatically deducted from my account. "And I bet my food isn't costing you much," Bob said with a nasty smirk. "At least let me work part-time then." Looking down on me, Bob sneered. "No way. You work full-time just like me. And don't even think about skimping on the housework." No matter how much I tried to argue, Bob's mind was made up. In the end, I had to return to my previous job at an electronics company. Now I was stuck doing all the housework on top of a full-time job. My life suddenly became incredibly hectic. I had no time for my detective hobby anymore. I was swamped with work and chores. Ever since that day, Bob had been constantly berating me, nitpicking about the housework. Every morning, in the brief moment we crossed paths, he'd find something to complain about. "The windows are dirty. There's dust in the hallway. You didn't iron my shirt. And because I work too, I had to handle these chores at night. Before I knew it, it was the end of the year, and the New Year's gathering was approaching. Bob, as always, said I shouldn't attend. You should stay home. No need to join the gathering. I figured it was pointless to argue, so I kept silent. As Bob left, he threw a parting shot. You're an embarrassment. I wouldn't want you in front of our relatives. His cruel words stunned me. How could Bob say something like that? I work from morning till night and handle all the housework. How could he be so harsh? Regardless, I decided to attend the New Year's gathering without telling Bob. I had to let my in-laws, Mr. and Mrs. Waters, see the real Bob. Tightly gripping the thick envelope I had just received, I headed to the Waters house for the New Year's gathering. I took a deep breath and opened the door. At the New Year's gathering, when I suddenly showed up, Bob looked shocked. But probably because he didn't want to make a scene in front of everyone, he just glared at me without saying a word. His relatives' gazes towards me were as cold as ever. They were all whispering, condemning me. I'm sure they've all just been fooled by my husband. I didn't let it bother me. Enduring their cold stares, I was in the kitchen preparing the food and drinks. After a while, maybe because the alcohol started to hit him, Bob began to loudly criticize me. Samantha can't even be useful in the kitchen. She doesn't even serve decent food at home. Everyone's icy stares turned to me all at once. Seeing that, Bob became even more arrogant, shouting out loud, "Man, my wife's cooking sucks." I caught the stern look of my father-in-law. What the hell is going on here? What have you been doing, Samantha? Maybe you're not suitable to be Bob's wife? With my father-in-law raising his voice, everyone's attention was on me. The moment everyone thought I was going to get a lecture, I stood up to Bob and began to counter-argue. Excuse me, have you ever tasted my cooking? Aren't you always at your mistress' place? Caught off guard, my father-in-law's mouth was agape. What the heck are you talking about? While everyone was in shock, only Bob tried to desperately make excuses. Come on, Samantha. Just because people are talking bad about you doesn't mean you should spread such lies. Turning to my father-in-law, Bob started to defend himself. Dad, I don't have a mistress, I swear. I hope so. My father-in-law seemed to want to believe Bob. He nodded in agreement to Bob's words over mine. Thinking he had regained my father-in-law's trust, Bob puffed up his chest and started to shoot back. Always saying crazy stuff. There's something really wrong with you. It wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment claim that Bob had a mistress. I pulled an envelope from my bag, showing the documents inside to my in-laws. Bob continued to vehemently criticize me. Hey, apologize now, and I'll forgive you for lying. The relatives seemed to believe that. Bob didn't have a mistress. They sent me stern glares. My father-in-law and mother-in-law were seriously reading the documents. The documents I provided were the result of an investigation into Bob's infidelity. It was clear that Bob's behavior was suspicious, so I had hired a private investigator to dig deeper. The results from the investigator were clear. Bob was caught red-handed. The reason Bob wasn't coming home was because he was with his mistress. He mostly spent his time at her apartment, and sometimes they would even check into motels. Bob was always eating at his mistress' place. While I was managing on a budget of $100 and working full-time, taking care of all the household chores, Bob was having a good time with his mistress. The time I ran into Bob in a motel district, he was about to meet his mistress there. I loudly exposed Bob's infidelity. It's not a lie. The evidence is right here. I pointed to the documents my father-in-law was holding. The apartment you see Bob entering is not our apartment. Murmurs arose from the relatives. Hey Bob, is this true? What's going on? Is this some kind of fabrication? My father-in-law and mother-in-law were engrossed in the photos. Bob, is this true? Sweating, Bob tried his best to deny it. No, that's not true. I don't have a mistress. What my father-in-law and mother-in-law were fixated on were the photos. Photos of Bob holding hands with an unknown woman, entering an unfamiliar apartment. Pictures of them picking out jewelry together in a store. Snaps of them drinking wine in a fancy restaurant. Pictures of them shopping for groceries. In all of them, Bob's carefree smile was captured. I relentlessly confronted Bob. Bob, you mentioned you've been busy with overtime every day, right? Bob's face turned red and he fell silent. My words became rapid with anger. Why did you lie about not wanting to see the family or that the food isn't good? I never lied about any of that. Bob seemed to be playing dumb even now. I was deeply disappointed by his attitude. Everyone went quiet as Bob and I argued. Then, a loud voice from my mother-in-law filled the room. "Bob, what on earth are you doing?" Bob was taken aback by her sudden outburst. No, that's not it. My mother-in-law, usually a gentle soul, now had a stern, almost menacing look in her eyes. Even though she wasn't yelling at me, I was still scared. "What do you mean? Are you saying all of this is made up?" She spoke in a calm voice now, but it was even more chilling. The other family members remained silent, overwhelmed by her presence. "So, the story about Samantha was a lie? Explain yourself." Relatives whispered among themselves. "I've never seen her so mad. She's always smiling, but she's the scariest when she's angry." Seemingly resigned, Bob sat down in a traditional manner and began to explain in a soft voice. "I knew that woman before we got married. We met at a club in Las Vegas." The room buzzed with whispers. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law looked at Bob sternly. With this strict family, I thought they'd never accept me marrying a woman from Vegas. It seemed like Bob might be crying as wet spots appeared on the floor. So I thought of marrying any suitable woman and then live with her. "So that suitable woman is me, huh?" "I'm sorry, you said you weren't interested in marriage. I thought if I just provided money, everything would work out." A question popped into my mind. "Then why did you badmouth me to my in-laws?" Had it not been for those rumors, I wouldn't have been so suspicious. I wanted her to be my real wife. I despised living with Samantha, whom I didn't even love. So I wanted to divorce you somehow. Do you realize how selfish you sound? Bob seemed to shrink even further. "Oh, I'm sorry. I've always been told I wouldn't be a real man unless I got married. So I thought I had to get married at any cost. I believed that once I was divorced, no one would bother me about remarrying." Bob assumed that once divorced, his parents wouldn't interfere with his remarriage, so he could then focus on his affair. All he needed was an excuse for the divorce. He had to make it seem like it was my fault, not his. That's why he tarnished my reputation. The reason for setting the living expenses at $100 was because he didn't want me to find out about his infidelity. He figured if he only gave me $100, I wouldn't be able to investigate. And if I worked full-time, I probably wouldn't have the time to look into it. It seems he never thought of using a private investigator. Such recklessness led to his downfall, and now Bob had to apologize in front of the family. "You knew an affair was the one thing you shouldn't have done, right? You even betrayed Samantha, who has done so much for you." Veins were bulging on his mother-in-law's forehead. Her anger seemed endless. Bob was shedding tears and snot. "Bob, you're the disgrace of this family. We're cutting ties with you." Everyone in the family was shocked. Probably what his mother-in-law says is the final word in this household. His father-in-law nodded in agreement. Bob no longer had a place in this household. In this house, in front of all the relatives, Bob's affair and lies were exposed. His own mother told him they were cutting ties. Dizzy and crying, Bob silently left the room. After Bob left, his mother-in-law came to me, holding my hand and apologizing. "Samantha, I'm so sorry for what Bob did. You can divorce him if you want. We won't blame you." With tears in her eyes, his mother-in-law continued holding my hand. "We were so deceived by Bob. We're so sorry for shouting at you for no reason, Samantha. I always thought his father-in-law was a silent and stubborn man, but he was quick to admit his mistakes and apologize. He's a good person. And I realized this family runs smoothly, thanks to his mother-in-law. They're such good parents. I wonder why Bob became so deceitful and disrespectful." I reconciled with my in-laws. And shortly after, my divorce with Bob was finalized. The divorce went just as Bob wanted. After being disowned by his family due to the affair, it seems Bob lost his backing from a prominent family. I heard he's been demoted at work and is now in a less significant position. His income decreased significantly and his mistress got tired of him and left. I got this information from Bob's mother-in-law. From the Waters family, I received more than twice the usual amount. I assume part of it was hush money. Now that I have some extra money, I'm indulging in luxury trips abroad a few times a year. The apartment they prepared for me and Bob is mine to use as long as I want. Bob was hardly ever there, so I'm living freely without any memories of him. The only good thing Bob ever did was encourage me to return to work. Thanks to that, I have a stable income now, and it seems I won't face any financial difficulties. I occasionally keep in touch with my ex-father-in-law and the rest. They invite me to their New Year gatherings, but I decline. My son and I are starting a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you two divorce, you won't be able to make ends meet. If you want our address, get on your knees and lick my shoes. What do you mean? I had no clue what my mother-in-law was talking about. I never sensed that they were planning to go abroad, or that they had been saving up money. That's because I said my son got $3 million. We're going to live the high life overseas, just the two of us. Why would my husband go abroad? And what's this about $3 million? Why do you want to know so badly? Well, if you really want to know, kneel down and beg, licking my shoes, and maybe I'll tell. What's with that attitude? Where is my husband? Oh, it's very comfortable here. We're enjoying the high life with my son's $3 million, so you're no longer needed. I was stunned by my mother-in-law's words. What on earth does it mean that my husband suddenly got $3 million and is living a luxurious life abroad? Moreover, the way she spoke about it as if I was an outsider. I was filled with anger and anxiety, but I needed to calmly assess the situation. How on earth did my husband get such a huge sum of money? And is that $3 million possibly related to? I work as a manager at a major IT company. I met my husband in the same department and was drawn to his positive and cheerful nature, which led to our marriage. In the early years of our marriage, his parents warmly welcomed me. Later on, we had a daughter who is now 14. I grew up in poverty and my parents were toxic. Having faced so many hardships, I was determined to cherish and love my daughter deeply, while juggling work and household chores. However, one day, my husband was assigned to a project in Texas and had to move there alone. It'll be tough living alone with our daughter, I said. Yeah, taking care of work, household chores, and our daughter will be hard. Let's ask my mom to come over and help out. That might be a relief. So I reluctantly agreed to live with my mother-in-law. Mommy, when will Daddy come back? That's what my daughter asked. It seems he'll be in Texas for a while, but don't worry, Grandma's coming over. And so, my mother-in-law moved in with us. I had no idea that this decision would be the biggest regret of my life. You're working late again today, huh? Women who neglect their families. I'd come home from work to biting remarks from her. I have a job too. And I take care of our daughter, I'd retort, but she was never satisfied. When I was young, the family was everything. The thought of working outside never crossed my mind. Then on the day my daughter got good grades at school, she said, "It's all thanks to me." What's the point of you? Maybe we don't need you around? Despite my mother-in-law helping only with simple homework tasks, I'd been the one teaching my daughter most subjects. When I slightly messed up a dish, she'd pounce. How did you and my son even survive before with such poor cooking skills? I'm doing my best. And everyone has their own way of doing things, I'd snap back. My patience was wearing thin. She doesn't do her chores. She complained to my husband. Mom, she's working too. Please try to understand. My husband would chime in. However, living together, the relationship between my mother-in-law and me became increasingly strained. With my husband far away, I felt more isolated. One day, I decided to call my husband to discuss this. Hello? Are you okay? Right now? Yeah, I'm good. It's kind of late. Well, your mom gave me a piece of her mind about house chores, and it's really getting to me. I'm sorry. Mom's always been a bit sharp-tongued. But maybe she has a point. Still, don't let it get to you too much. Just keep doing things at your own pace. Feeling a bit reassured by my husband's words, I once again dedicated myself to our daily routine. But as my husband was away, the pressure from my mother-in-law kept building, and I was getting more and more worn out. Every day, I looked forward to my husband's return. Living with my mother-in-law without my husband around was challenging. Initially, I got by, holding on to the remnants of my husband's presence. But as days turned into weeks, her behavior grew even more unbearable, and I felt crushed under the weight. She would nitpick everything I did from dawn till dusk, and criticize me constantly. When I made my husband's favorite rice dish, she coldly remarked, "This tastes terrible. Who would eat this?" Whenever I took a short break, she would chastise me, saying, "How can a woman who can't even handle household chores take a break?" I never had much confidence in housework. With my husband, he would just laugh off my little mistakes. In front of my mother-in-law, I realized I had no room for error. I think the way she treats me stems from her excessive love for her son. She seems unable to accept that he got married and moved away from her. This experience made me firmly resolve never to become an overbearing parent like her. One day, after treating myself to a small shopping spree at a local mall, my mother-in-law got wind of it. When I got home, she was waiting for me at the entrance, fuming. "How could you think of going out for fun when your husband isn't home? What do you think is happening with the household chores?" I thought I needed a little break. A break? In this situation? All this trouble is happening because of your ineptitude. After that, I awaited a call from my husband. I believed that hearing his voice might lighten my mood. But the content of his call was far from what I expected. "I've got some bad news. My work in Texas isn't going well. I got into gambling, and now I'm in a tight spot financially. I've also accumulated quite a debt." "What? Are you kidding me? Gambling and debt? This is way out of line. What's gonna happen to our future? And our daughters? I'm sorry. Sorry, really sorry. I feel stuck right now. But trust me, I'll find a way. Tal, how do you plan to handle this? How much do you owe? I'm working on a solution. I always thought of my husband as a sincere person who would never gamble. He was always punctual for our dates, and after we moved in together, he always came straight home from work. He would always thank me whenever I cooked or did laundry. It's because he was so sincere and honest that I married him. But with him away and the constant criticism from my mother-in-law, my life felt unbearable. "I can't believe someone as useless as you married my son." My heart was sinking into despair. Since my husband started working away from home, I've been constantly criticized and blamed by my mother-in-law. And my husband's recent confession deepened the despair I felt inside. His debts, the gambling issues, followed by an onslaught of more criticism from my mother-in-law. I couldn't handle it anymore. And one night, I left the house and found myself crying on a park bench. Then one day, my mother-in-law discovered a secret from my past. At dinner, she used it as ammunition against me. "So I heard you used to work in a nightclub, huh? Shame on you for raising my grandchild after working in such a place. How did you find out about that?" I was telling an acquaintance about how useless my son's wife is and showed them a picture of you. They recognized you. Apparently you weren't even good at that nightclub job. In my past, frustrated with a mother who never worked and always partied, I left my family home. Struggling for money, I found work at a nightclub. It was a time before I married my husband, a secret I believed even he didn't know. I was at a loss for words. I had never imagined my mother-in-law would discover this about my past. And she continued to use this secret to berate me further. "I can't believe someone like you is the mother of my grandchild. I'll tell my son and have you kicked out." The depth of my despair grew even deeper. My married life with my husband, all the efforts I've made and the future I had envisioned, it felt as if everything was taken away with her words. The communication from my husband dwindled. I feared he had started to doubt and suspect me. One night, alone in my room, I reflected on my life. Meeting my husband, our marriage, and our current circumstances, and the constant blame and accusations from my mother-in-law, I felt I couldn't go on like this. "I can't take it anymore." Whispering these words, I walked out into the lonely nighttime streets. The quiet streets echoed the hopelessness I felt inside. My mother-in-law's words resonated in my head. In my head, my past, my secrets, and my present, everything became a target for her criticism and blame. I sat on a bench in a park, staring up at the sky. Not a single star was visible. My heart felt just as dark. Suddenly, someone approached. "Mom, why are you here?" My daughter sat next to me, holding my hand. "Mom, don't let Grandma get to you. You work hard at an IT company and you've been through so much. You're strong. Thank you. But maybe Grandma has a point. Mom, Grandma's just stuck in the past. In today's world, you should be proud of any job you've done. I'm proud you worked at a nightclub. Really? Yes. Because it shows you've always tried your best for us, no matter the circumstances. Don't let Grandma's words control you. Hearing my daughter's words warmed my heart, and I couldn't hold back my tears. Mom, you're working hard in IT now, right? That's amazing. I'll always be on your side no matter what Grandma says. Gratitude for my daughter filled my heart. Her support gave me hope that together we could overcome any challenges. Later in my husband's study, I took a deep breath before delving into a mountain of paperwork. I meticulously checked each document, trying to uncover his secrets. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan agreements. Slowly, my husband's financial situation became clearer. Why did this happen? I found several receipts from gambling activities, horse racing, slot machines, casinos. Thinking about how much money he had squandered on these activities was heart-wrenching. Next, I turned on my husband's PC. The password was his birthday, but reversed. His mailbox was flooded with collection emails from financial institutions and messages from friends demanding repayment of loans. Furthermore, I found a plethora of promotional emails from gambling-related sites. I decided to calculate how much my husband had spent on gambling. The result was an astounding $3 million, far beyond my estimation. Seeing that amount, I temporarily panicked. But there's no time to lose. I began to plan on securing funds to maintain our livelihood. I considered my savings, the expected amount from selling our high-end electronics and luxury goods at home, and the savings from my salary. After that, I continued my own investigation. I strived daily, reaching out to financial institutions to grasp the details of how much my husband owed and where, and by obtaining credit information in his name. A few days later, came up with a plan. I began preparations to build a life without relying on my husband or mother-in-law, while also figuring out a strategy to repay my husband's debts. Capitalizing on my experience in the IT industry, I decided to join freelance projects. For several days, I created a portfolio and registered on a website introducing freelance jobs. Then, a few days later, I received my first request from a client. This will help a bit with our living expenses. In between daily work, I reviewed our household finances. I canceled unnecessary subscription services, cut down on wasteful spending, and researched recipes for savings. I successfully reduced our daily food expenses as much as possible. Moreover, based on information from local mom friends, I tried participating in a community yard sale. I managed to sell some brand items and unnecessary electronics we had, earning a decent amount. A few weeks later, my activities as a freelancer were going smoothly, and I felt that my income was becoming stable. By then, my bank account had a firm amount necessary for living expenses. When I came home, all of my mother-in-law's belongings were gone. Simultaneously, my phone rang. The caller was my mother-in-law. "Oh, are you already home? Did you notice our stuff is gone? What are you trying to say?" I couldn't help but chuckle. Actually, that $3 million is a debt. Stop joking. There's no way my son has that kind of debt. You might not believe it, but it's true. In his study, there are transaction records from banks and financial institutions, credit card bills, contracts, and more. Plus, on his PC, there are collection emails from financial institutions, messages from friends demanding repayment, and promotional emails from gambling sites. If you don't believe me, why don't you check? You're lying. It's the result of him getting deeply into gambling. Horse racing, slot machines, casinos, all in all, it amounts to a whopping $3 million. I just sent you photos of the evidence. Maybe you should take a look? I had no idea. He probably didn't want you to know. But it doesn't change the facts. I've been pondering how to deal with this massive debt, but I guess I don't have to anymore. My mother-in-law took a deep breath in silence. I truly didn't know. I don't know what to say. Without saying another word, I hung up. I resolved to start a new life from this point on. From this point on, I was shocked by the actions of my husband and mother-in-law. But moving forward, there was nothing to do but forge ahead for the future of my daughter and me. Later on, my husband called and apologized, saying, "I'm so sorry." Truly am. His voice was more subdued than I had ever heard it, but my anger did not subside. I couldn't understand why it had come to this. Our family was falling apart because of him. I never thought it would come to this. But when I decided to go overseas with my mother, I couldn't see a future with my husband and our daughter. I was flabbergasted by his words. "You couldn't see?" I asked. "It's because of your carelessness and lack of planning that our family is in this mess." He was silent for a while before asking, "Did you truly love our family?" I replied I did. But now it's different. At that point his voice broke and I could hear him crying. "Don't hurt us anymore," I said. "My daughter and I are going to live on our own from now on. We'll forget about you." He didn't say anything back, and I could only hear his sobbing from the other end. Calmly, I hung up the phone. The reason my mother-in-law confused assets with debts was due to a bill of $3 million that suddenly arrived at our home. She mistook the $3 million bill for a lottery-winning notice. She began planning her dream relocation overseas and approached my husband about it. Unaware of his mother's misunderstanding and thinking starting a new life overseas would allow him to escape the debt problem, he accepted her proposal, mistaking a bill for a lottery notice. After that, I kept my anger towards my husband and began looking for a lawyer. I was set on preparing for a divorce, claiming compensation for emotional distress and child support. Now a new life was about to start. A life for me and my daughter, independent from my husband and mother-in-law. I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce, emotional distress compensation, and child support claims. During this period, my daughter and I spent a lot of quality time together, and she became my strongest supporter. She fully understood my decision and chose to stay with me. Hearing her words made all the hardships, disputes with my husband and mother-in-law worth it, and I couldn't help but shed tears. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and husband were struggling with their life overseas. Despite starting a new life there, they apparently faced continuous problems due to a lack of preparation and financial issues. Furthermore, after being pickpocketed and losing their funds, they faced even more difficulties due to the language barrier. In the end, they were deported for overstaying their visas. Later, I negotiated with my husband through a lawyer, and the divorce was finalized. We agreed that he would pay the emotional distress compensation and child support in one lump sum. Now I can finally start a new life. But all at once? Wouldn't it be better in installments? My husband took on even more debt, seemingly borrowing money from some shady loan shark. I don't know what happened to him after that, and honestly, I don't care. After being evicted from her rental property and getting pickpocketed, my mother-in-law ended up homeless upon her return to the US. My daughter and I started our new life. Sure, it wasn't always easy, but being freed from my husband and mother-in-law, we could look to the future positively. I want to live happily, collaborating with my daughter, who saved me from the depths of despair. I'm staying over tonight. Please accommodate us. Excuse me? Come on, I told you before. I'm watching a play nearby tonight, and since it ends late in the evening, I said we'd all be staying here. During her son's absence, my mother-in-law arrived unannounced with 7 friends. Having not been informed and having plans of my own, I tried to decline. Huh? But you'll be back soon, right? We'll just drop our stuff and head out for a while. Can you prepare dinner and sleeping arrangements for us? She seemed to disregard my situation and proceeded as if everything was settled. What's more, I recognized the necklace shimmering around her neck. I had endured my mother-in-law's brazen behavior without confrontation for so long, but I finally reached my limit. I can't. I have a trip planned starting now. What? A trip? Who are you going with? The usually non-confrontational me responding with a no surprised her. Having had enough of her excessive harassment, I finally drew the line. Please give me back that necklace. It was time for my mother-in-law to face consequences for her actions. My name is Michelle Gorman, a 30-year-old housewife. After getting married, I used my administrative experience to work as a computer class instructor. My husband, Mike, serves as the president of a subsidiary that his father owns, and he seems busy every day. Though he sometimes looks deep in thought, I'm relieved to see him relaxed, especially when we go on our favorite movie dates. He would say, "I feel lighter when I'm with you." I was glad if I could ease any of his burdens. I wish I could offer advice or suggestions, but I struggle to express my opinions. Ever since I was young, I preferred listening to others than speaking about myself. My older brother, who is 4 years older, always looked out for me. I used to dislike that about myself, but thanks to Mike's reassurance, I've gained some confidence. Mike has an older brother who serves as the vice president in their father's company. His wife Mindy is close in age to me, and we get along well. She's a career-driven woman, both reliable and kind. I admire how she stands her ground and expresses her opinions. Yet she is also understanding and adaptable. Seeing her confront the mother-in-law was truly impressive. However, since they live far away, I regret not being able to see them often. On the other hand, the mother-in-law behaves with the air of a company president's daughter, always confident. Yet her stubbornness and arrogance are evident. Michelle, you're the wife of Mike, the president. You should quit being a computer instructor and fully support your husband. She would reprimand me, overwhelming me with her pressure. Mike would back me up, but she would remain displeased. I sometimes felt relieved that we lived apart. I hoped for a peaceful life with Mike and eventually to be blessed with children. But suddenly, Mike's father passed away from a heart attack. The news was so unexpected, it was hard for everyone to accept. Yet, Mike and his brother had to think about the company's future. Mike decided to stay in New York for a while. I returned home and waited for Mike's call. With the added responsibilities on the two of them, I was worried. After discussions with his brother, it was decided that Mike would transfer to the New York headquarters. His brother became the president, and Mike was appointed vice president. We searched for a house in New York and settled on a pre-built single-family home. Although it was a bit far from the station, it was in a less urban area, providing a sense of security. The house had good sunlight, promising a comfortable life. With Mike having to work late due to the handover tasks for a while, I made sure to create a comfortable environment at home so he could rest properly and prepared lunches considering nutritional balance. I wanted to do everything I could to support him. And just like that, a month flew by. I'm home, I'm hungry, I said as I walked through the door. Thanks for working so late, I'll get dinner ready. Thanks. Hey Michelle, my mom said she wants to come over this weekend. Wait, is that okay? I had been concerned that she might be feeling down since my father-in-law passed away, so this was a relief to hear. Hearing this was a relief. Of course, there are still some areas that need to be tidied up, but she is more than welcome. Thank you, I will inform her. Oh, maybe I should also invite my brother and his wife. Yes, that sounds good. As inappropriate as it may sound, moving here made it easier for me to frequently meet Mindy, my sister-in-law, which was a pleasant surprise. That weekend, we all gathered to catch up on the current situation and share memories of my father-in-law. It is really sad that my dad is gone, but I felt that I should not be down forever, so I started taking up a hobby. Seeing my mother-in-law's cheerful face brought me relief. She always carried herself with elegance, always wearing beautiful dresses and lovely accessories. Today, she looked stylish with a pale purple scarf that stood out. She seemed to have lost a little weight, but her firmness in advising Mike and his brother on company matters has not changed. However, since my father-in-law's passing, I felt that her strict remarks towards me increased. Michelle, we're running low on drinks. Could you go buy some? Jessica, I can go get them. Oh, can you? That would be helpful then. She seemed to be more commanding towards me than she was with Mindy. I thought she might be struggling with the loss of her husband, so I decided to observe and let her comments slide for a while. After dinner, Mike drove everyone home and the night came to an end. Since then, for some reason, my mother-in-law began visiting our home frequently. She started criticizing my housework and complaining about Mindy. Moreover, she began going through our fridge without permission, which left me stunned. Michelle, Mike is so busy right now. You should pay more attention to the meals you prepare for him. What if he collapses too? Yes, I'll be more careful. Also, there's still trash here. Can't you clean up perfectly? I'm sorry. It continued like this. It felt as though she was picking on me just to pass the time. But when Mindy would visit, she would quickly leave, saying she had other things to do. She said it was not because she disliked me, but I felt otherwise. Perhaps she found it easier to assert herself over me, who rarely countered, than over Mindy, who always spoke her mind. I thought about finding a job to spend less time at home. But even after finding one, the harassment from my mother-in-law intensified. Michelle, we ran out of barbecue sauce at our place, so get some while you're out. Oh, I brought a container with me, so let me take some leftovers. Her audacity sometimes left me dumbfounded. She could just as easily buy premium ingredients from an upscale store. Then, an incident occurred. A necklace I cherished disappeared. It was a keepsake from my mother, which I had kept safely on a shelf in my room. The only person I could think of who could have taken it was my mother-in-law. The only person I could think of who could have taken it was my mother-in-law. Though I didn't want to suspect her, she often looked around our home and probably knew where most things were. Despite searching everywhere, it remained missing, so I decided to ask her about it. That's when she responded with a fierce yell. You probably lost it yourself. How dare you suspect me? What kind of person are you? I'm sorry. I searched everywhere I could think of, but I couldn't find it. It's a keepsake from my mother, and it means a lot to me. More than the anger I felt towards being accused, I was devastated about losing my mother's keepsake, and tears began to roll down. I don't care. It's just a necklace. Why don't you just have Mike buy you a new one? It's not about getting a new one. I realized she wouldn't understand my feelings and decided not to discuss it further. However, incidents kept occurring where money from my wallet and other items around the house would go missing. Though I kept a watchful eye on my mother-in-law's actions, I never saw her take anything. Confused and emotionally exhausted, I confided in Mindy, who asserted that my mother-in-law was definitely the prime suspect. No one else had access to our home. The realization saddened me, yet there was no concrete evidence of her theft, and I couldn't understand why she would do such a thing, especially since she continued to live a lavish lifestyle from the inheritance left by my father-in-law. Seeing my distress, Mindy made a suggestion. Little did I know at the time where this would lead. About 2 weeks after speaking to Mindy, I'll be off then. Michelle, just relax and enjoy your trip. Okay, be careful. Mike and his brother were going on a business trip to meet with a company from another state. Knowing about their trip, Mindy thought it might be a good time for us to take a break and invited me on a short vacation. Having been mentally and physically drained recently, the idea of a getaway was appealing. I packed early and placed my travel bag near the entrance, waiting for departure time. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it could be, I checked the video feed to find my mother-in-law. Not only her, but she was accompanied by several others. Hello, Michelle. I brought some friends. Please open up. Opening the front door, I found my mother-in-law and about 7 of her friends, all carrying large bags. Were they going somewhere? I asked. We're staying here tonight. Make us comfortable. Excuse me? I replied, taken aback. Didn't I mention it? We're seeing a play nearby tonight, and since it ends late, we're all staying here. This was news to me. My departure time was approaching. Oh, did I inconvenience you? I heard from Jessica that you were open to having us. I hadn't heard anything of the sort, and it seemed she was making up the story as she went along. Growing increasingly frustrated, I replied firmly, I'm sorry, but I wasn't informed of this, and I have plans. To my reply, she looked taken aback. But you'll be back soon, right? We'll drop our bags and head out for a bit. Just prepare dinner and sleeping arrangements for us. Ignoring the fact that I had plans, I knew I couldn't let this slide. I'm going on a trip. A trip? With whom? With Mindy. Oh, just with Mindy. You can go anytime? We've come all this way just for today. How long are you going to make us wait? Just then I noticed something glinting around her neck. Wait, that necklace you're wearing? To my astonishment, it was the same necklace that was a keepsake from my mother. Jessica, where did you get that necklace? Why, it's just one of my collections. Is there a problem? She answered with a smug look. That can't be right. That necklace is a limited edition, and not many are out there. While I was exchanging words with her, Mindy arrived. I was wondering why you didn't show up at our meeting place and didn't contact me. So this is what was happening. I'm sorry I couldn't get in touch. Mindy, seeing my expression, instantly knew something was amiss. What happened? I got upset because the necklace she's wearing is the same one as my mother's that went missing recently. Oh, the one you kept in that box? Mindy purposefully said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, trying to keep it from her friends, whispered to us, "Can you stop this? It's embarrassing. Do you want to accuse me of theft?" "Yes, honestly, I find it suspicious," Mindy answered firmly. "Do you have any proof that I stole it?" "It's embarrassing having such unreasonable daughters-in-law. Please don't make a scene in front of my friends." With that, she turned back to her friends with a smile. "Well, let's go inside, everyone." As she attempted to move inside, I remembered something. The initials? My mother's initials are engraved on the necklace. "Jessica, can I have a look, please?" Mindy quickly went behind her to check. "Enough of this. What's your mother's name?" "It's K Young, so the initials should be KY. There it is. The initials KY. The friends looked horrified and stepped back. "Stop this. I didn't come here for this. Let's go, everyone. We're not letting you go." The friends, sensing the tension, quickly muttered, "We're not involved," and headed towards the subway. "Wait, it's a mistake." As she tried to follow her friends, someone stopped her. "What are you doing here?" "Huh? Weren't you supposed to be on a business trip?" Standing there was Mike. Turns out Mike's business trip was actually scheduled for the next day. To investigate his mother's actions, he had purposely given her a false date. Mindy had informed Mike about the missing items from the house after I had confided in her. Initially, Mike was skeptical, but upon visiting his childhood home and noticing several items identical to ours, he began to suspect theft. However, without evidence, he knew she could easily deny it, leading him to come up with today's plan. Inviting friends for an overnight stay was unexpected, but he was certain his mother would visit if she believed he wasn't home. "What do you want at our house?" I asked. "I was just leaving," my mother-in-law replied. As she tried to leave, I stopped her. "Give it back, that necklace. Isn't that necklace the keepsake from Michelle's parents?" "Why do you have it, Mom?" "It's not what you think. I found it in my purse. Michelle must have set me up," she said, seemingly fearing the disadvantageous position she was in. Suddenly, my mother-in-law shifted the blame to me. "Do you really think such a lie would work? There's no way Michelle would do something like that." "First, give the necklace back to Michelle. We'll talk after that," I said firmly. Reluctantly, she took off the necklace, threw it on the ground, and tried to run away. "Hey, wait!" I called out, but the three of us stopped shortly. We no longer needed to chase her. Why?" I asked, confused. 10 police officers stood in front of her. I, too, was unsure about what was happening, just staring at the bizarre scene. I thought to myself. Then one of the officers said, "We received a report from a local resident. They said someone who seemed to be causing a ruckus here was often seen entering this house when the owners were away. They asked us to come quickly." "What are you talking about?" My mother-in-law retorted, looking annoyed. "I'm the mother of the son, living here, getting the police involved in a family matter." "Wait, what do you mean she entered when we weren't home?" "I never did such a thing. I always come when you're home," she continued to deny. When we asked the police, they mentioned that someone had witnessed my mother-in-law sneaking into our backyard, likely using a spare key to get inside. Indeed, we had a spare key hidden beneath a plant pot in the backyard. This realization gave us the evidence we needed to confront her. The realization gave us chills and also explained the missing items. Mike had considered this possibility and was planning to observe her actions while we were out today, but he never expected to find out the truth in this manner. "Mom, why were you coming into our house when we weren't home?" "It's all lies. You're gonna believe some unknown person's story? But you did have my precious necklace, didn't you?" "I told you I found it in my purse." One of the officers stepped in, saying calmly, "Let's talk about this at the station." But I didn't do anything. "Mike, say something." "Mom, stop this. I can't understand why you did this." Upon hearing her son's words, the mother-in-law collapsed to the ground. But just when it seemed like she had nowhere left to run and was feeling defeated, she suddenly flew into a rage. "Because after your father passed away, I felt so lonely. And seeing her always so cheerful, I couldn't stand it. I felt better seeing her troubled. I wanted her to feel the pain I felt. Mike was red-faced hearing her irrational reasoning. Mike, wait, let me speak. Feeling the need to confront the issue head-on, Michelle stepped in front of an increasingly angry Mike. I understand where you're coming from, Jessica. Perhaps I've been neglectful by always brushing off our talks. However, stealing is a different matter entirely. Did you want to upset me? Don't be ridiculous. Did you find joy in pushing someone to their limits with such a twisted and dirty scheme? Did that fill the void of your loneliness? Shut up. What do you know about me? If you're feeling down, then tell us. We can't read minds. Don't make fun of me. Why would I tell you anything, you worthless daughter-in-law? Mom, Michelle's right. Seeing the situation wasn't progressing, the police intervened, suggesting they move to the station. Are you really gonna take me in? I can't believe this. Despite her resistance, given the eyewitness accounts of the unlawful entry and the suspicion of theft from possessing my belongings, the police decided to question my mother-in-law. And so she was promptly arrested on charges of unlawful entry and theft. She wasn't convinced, continuously protesting, "Get me a lawyer, I'm innocent and I can't eat this garbage." However, when her father visited her during visitation, he exploded in anger, telling her to deeply reflect on her actions. To that, her attitude completely changed as she cried and apologized. Considering her typically carefree behavior, he seemed to be the only authority she wouldn't defy. He further told her that unless she sincerely reflected on her actions, she shouldn't think. She shouldn't think of having a home to return to. Reluctantly, she seemed to accept the reality. Perhaps losing her husband had left my mother-in-law in search of her place. Were her fancy clothes and jewelry merely an armor to keep herself strong? I even began to wonder if her different attitudes towards me and my sister-in-law were just attempts to mask her vulnerabilities. However, her excessive desires and inability to control them is a separate issue. Making wrong judgments led to this unfortunate incident. I was surprised to see the event escalate to this magnitude, but realizing that she had been using the spare key to enter our house without our knowledge genuinely terrified me. Later, I found out that the couple living diagonally across from us had reported her. The wife, who works from home, had noticed my mother-in-law entering our yard suspiciously multiple times and found it odd. I am nothing but grateful for their brave actions. Since then, we have been leading a peaceful life. Just to be safe, we changed our locks and stopped hiding a spare key in the yard. Mike severed ties with his mother and made her promise not to contact us ever again. If she attempted to, he warned of legal action. After her release, she returned to her rural childhood home and is reportedly leading a humble life, a stark contrast to her past lavish lifestyle. Being watched by her father, she helps around the house from early morning. I truly hope she reevaluates her past excessive actions. Meanwhile, my own father has moved in with us. In case my mother-in-law decides to pay another unexpected visit, he is here to ensure my safety. But there is another reason he is with us. I am currently expecting our first child. Anticipating the birth of his grandchild, my kind father and the support of Mike make me want to be a mother who embodies both tenderness and strength. While money and possessions can provide a sense of fulfillment, it is the presence of loved ones that truly fills the heart. We are discussing living arrangements, and surrounded by those dear to us, we aim to protect our peaceful daily lives.